So MJ is saying, what are the top 3 things you would do if you were president of the United States?
Oh my God.
Armin's gonna love this. Who are you gonna decide?
Well, I'm gonna go with the first thing I would do. I would do a trade policy based on different countries' human rights records. Okay, that would be the first thing I do. Right, so I would put I would drop the barriers to trade with every single country that has a good human rights record and increase it on every country. Increase it significantly, and I would try to build an so that would be the same thing. First thing. Second thing I would do, I would try to give teeth to human rights and international organizations like the UN, actually make them functional. And try to build a make the US lead a world coalition so that other countries like in Europe and so I will make a coalition of countries that every country that joins this drops every single trade barrier. They will have access to all of US markets without any tax barriers if they clean up their human rights record. Okay. And if they join this coalition, they have to have the same policy, right? To basically build build an economic powerhouse of countries that have a good human rights record, right? And this should make everybody happy, right? It should make all the, rich people happy and poor people happy, right? Rich people are like, oh my God, look at all this trade that we're gonna make money because look, barriers to free trade is being removed, and poor people who are oppressed should be happy as well because this is going to encourage a lot of politicians to clean up their human rights record to be able to take part in this coalition. What else? Okay, you go with your list. I'll think of the third.
Well, in the immediate term, the vaccination effort we already talked about. So that's the one thing. The second thing is the reasons that the 2 main reasons that the U.S. is a superpower in the world right now is innovation and immigration. Those are the 2 things. So put a lot into that. Innovation, as in entrepreneurs. Investing in people who have really cool ideas, really making it an ideas economy. And the second thing is optimizing the immigration process, which right now is in tatters, to make sure that the kind of skilled people that the U.S. has produced, most of them have been immigrants, and that has been the lifeblood of the U.S.'s progress and economic success. Right. In the world, right? So that's the second thing. As far as the foreign policy goes, I would say this thing about Saudi Arabia, oil-producing countries, dictatorships, clean energy is the way to get rid of all of that. The more right now, the U.S., the new incoming government in the U.S. is actually speaking out a lot more against Saudi Arabia, and they're intending to go against Saudi Arabia, and they can do that because the U.S. is not as dependent on the oil of Saudi Arabia anymore, right? So, the chances are, that the human rights activist woman who just got that sentence?
Yeah.
The 6 years. So it's actually going to be a lot less. I mean, there's a great article in the Washington Post about it. I won't get into that right now. It's a separate issue. Hopefully, we'll get a question on it. But I think that those are the top 3 things.
Okay, the 2 other things I would do, I'll go through it really quickly. When it comes to education, I will try to go, because the progress is going away from colleges and university and towards people having more access to education themselves online, and try to, instead of trying to get the government to subsidize people's public schools or public colleges or universities, I would try to take that funding and make it a result based, when people make it have more standardized testing where people could go self learn with whatever tools they have. So basically, to reduce the cost of education, it doesn't really matter if you go to an expensive university or a cheap university, or if you learn online by yourself. You get funding for your education if you pass certain tests, right? So you have government, I think, removing all of the funding for public universities and public colleges and just letting people figure out the way. And if they do the work and do the study, they get funding because they pass a test. This will significantly reduce the cost, the government's cost of supporting education. When it comes to healthcare, what I would do is that instead of getting the government involved, first of all, I will try to destroy the monopolies and the involvement of insurance companies by breaking them apart. And removing their influence on doctors and medicine and all that. But I also, instead of trying to fund healthcare, what I would do is I would subsidize individuals for their health costs, and so that they could spend it on whatever health needs that they have. And so this way it will increase competition. At the same time, you're subsidizing health, but you're also not getting in the way in promoting competition, which will lower the costs. And I also make sure that I subsidize people who are taking preventive measures as well, right? So your subsidy will go higher if you quit smoking, if you exercise, if you go and show that you're making progress based on key health metrics, that you have taken measures to show that your blood test or whatever, your weight is making improvements. I will have some, I would redirect the funding to just directly being involved in healthcare, to promoting taking care of health. I think this would be a much reduced cost for the government if you take more preemptive measures, if you promote people taking more preemptive measures. Anyways, that was
healthcare, but that's a separate debate.
Yes, that's a second. Okay. Well, I lost my place. Okay, so let me just highlight this before I find that. You could deal with that while I find. Okay.
Nusantara Rising is saying, religion aside, what philosophies do you subscribe to? Asking a Aurelian Stoic. What philosophy do I subscribe to?
I'm a utilitarianist. I'm a libertarian. I'm a consequentialist. What else? Okay, what about you, Ali?
I don't know. What do you think?
I'm a determinist. Okay, determinist, utilitarian, consequentialist, libertarian. I can't think of other things.
I'm agnostic for when it comes to most of these things. So
okay, there we go.
All right, Katie Lynn is saying, how did both of you first come across liberal ideas growing up in conservative countries? I guess Armin grew up in a liberal family, but what about Ali? Well, I grew up in a sort of a moderate family. I mean, they weren't super, super, super liberal, but they were more liberal than Saudi Arabia. They were more liberal than most conservative Muslim families. So both my parents were U.S. educated. So yeah, when it came to liberal ideas, I sort of always had a sense of it. A lot of it was that I was seeing what was happening around me in Saudi and Pakistan, and I just thought it was wrong. It's like, this should not happen. So some of it, when I was a little kid, was very intuitive. The other part of it was really when I was, I think, 10 years old, saw Carl Sagan's Cosmos in school. They showed it to us. And that it didn't really give me the answers as much as it just made me think about things differently. So it just kind of taught me how to think rather than what to think.
Okay. Do this one.
Ertugrul saying, a 2020 internal Turkish poll in Turkey showed only 74% of adults aged between 18 to 29 believe the Quran is the word of God. I'm not surprised. If that is true, I don't know if this was an online poll. I don't know if it was a formal poll where, there was how the samples were selected and weighted and so on. So, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised that age group between 18 and 29, anywhere in the Muslim world, that anywhere from half to, half or more than half of young people don't think that the Quran is the literal word of God. It's just not something that resonates anymore like it used to.
I agree with Susanna. I would federally ban and criminalize circumcision as well.
Oh yeah, of course. It's child abuse. It's
Yes.
absolute child abuse. If it didn't have religion behind it, it would shut down everybody who's doing it. It's absolute child abuse.
Yeah, I would make an executive order. Okay, this one, did we see? Oh yeah, I've seen that, Nicentera, and yeah, that was a long time ago, so I don't know what I think.
You gotta
about it.
read out the question, Armin, for people listening.
Yeah. Have you seen Caspian Report's video on Islamic science? What are your thoughts? I watched it so long ago that I don't remember. I think overall I had a favorable view. By the way, no, actually, let me make it clear. It should not be called Islamic science. It was science done by Muslims. Okay. There is no such thing as Islamic science. There's no such thing as Christian science. There's no such thing as Jewish science. There's no such thing as Hindu science. Okay, these are science. These are people who are scientists who do science. Use a scientific method to gather information, and has nothing to do. They just happen to be a Muslim. They just happen to be Christian. They just happen to be Jewish or Hindu. Them doing science has nothing to do with their religion. They happen to be. Okay, the Arab Empire grew to a certain size that had enough wealth to be able to do science and philosophy and art instead of just doing grades, and everybody was a Muslim at that time. So the people that ended up doing science and used the scientific method to figure out information and just happened to be Muslim at the same time, right? None of the science that they did has anything to do with Islamic teaching, and that's why it should never be called Islamic science. Okay, you could call it maybe Arab science or Persian science or whatever. It's just science. It's just science. Okay, it's people doing science in spite of Islam, not because of Islam. So don't call it Islamic science. All right, cool. What do you think, Ellie?
I completely agree. We've made the same point many times. Completely agree.
Right. Okay, there we go.
Fawad Ali's asking, how old were you guys when you became an atheist?
18. Well, 16 agnostic. 16 starting to doubt. 18, I was like, yeah, atheist, full on atheist. I didn't know it was called being an atheist, but it was. What do you think?
I went through. I started to doubt. I think when I was 5, when I wrote about it in my book. When my cousin, my 3-year-old cousin, died. But as I grew up, there were times when I dabbled in and out. I think I fully became. I never liked the word atheist. I was an atheist, but I never liked the word. When I truly became comfortable with it was, I think, in my early 20s, like maybe 23, something like that. But I was essentially. I used to call myself agnostic, but I was an atheist. Bulbul is saying, what are your thoughts on Rumi?
I don't have any thoughts on Rumi, which is weird because as an Iranian,
you should, right?
Yeah, like this. I just know he's very, very, very celebrated, but I'm like, meh. What about you?
I kind of agree with you. I don't. I mean, he's written some things that are really like just the way poetry moves you. He's got that, but I just don't feel like he was as extraordinary as people think he is. But I mean, it's good to read. There's some pretty stuff that he wrote.
You know which Persian poet is actually extraordinary? Like, forget Rumi.
Omar Khayyam?
Yes.
Yeah.
Screw Rumi. Khayyam all the way.
Omar Khayyam. There's a poet named Mirza Ghalib from India, and he used to write in Urdu, but he also wrote a lot of Persian poetry. I obviously don't understand the Persian poetry, but I think some of the things he wrote are just the absolute most amazing things. And he was secular. Like you could tell how atheistic and how anti-theistic he was. And it's amazing. Like a lot of these places, like in Iran and India and Pakistan, everything, they have this history, this treasure trove of secular poets and literatures, but you don't hear about it as much, about that side of their background.
Hey guys, if you want to join these streams live, get your comments and questions read by Ali and Armin and the guests, and Most importantly, to get full access to the full video versions of all these episodes, become a patron. Link in the description below.